Hi, good afternoon. I'm James Lim, founder of Property Plus System, and today I will just be covering about Q1 2025, how the property market is like. Since we are now in Q2 at time, we can look at last quarter data, and we can see I will give you some analysis of how the market has been performing. Okay, so let's get on to it. So first of all, I will look at the data for the last 5 years transacted prices, and from 2020 to all the way to 2025. Okay, there are two things, or rather there are three things for you to look at. The first is how the price trend is going. Number two, we should also look at the total number of units transacted, and of course we can look at the difference between the green and the orange one, where actually they tells you the difference of whether people are buying in the secondary market or in the primary market. Okay, and then again, what is the meaning of primary market? Basically, is new building under construction projects, or what we call BUC, that people buy from developers, and resale market is actually second hand, okay, where people buy from someone else, okay, from private. So now, if you look at this trend at time over the last 5 years, you can see that the property price has actually been going up consistently. Okay, and if you look at again 2025, just only 2025 only, the price actually been pretty stagnant. Okay, which is actually to me is kind of like a good sign that what the government wants, or is actually increasing incrementally slowly. Okay, but more interestingly, I would just like to point out about if you look at between 2024 at the time, especially Q2 and Q3 at the time, since there is not much of inventory by developers, so that the number of people purchasing new launches is actually very low. And the bulk purchase are those that is actually entering into a resale market. But of course, if you look at Q4 to Q1 of this year, that time, you'll see that there's a lot of new launches. That's why, right, the orange number of people transacted volume has actually increased by a lot. Okay, so it brings up the total amount of people buying properties higher up. But again, if we look at the trend line of what's the total number transacted, if you look at it, more or less is about the same for the resale market. Okay, so resale market is actually pretty stable, which means people need a house, people definitely will buy a house, people are upgrading, so there's not much change in the resale market. Okay, the only difference you will see is actually during the COVID period, Q2 of 2020, that was during the lockdown at time. Very few people are actually buying new launches. Oh, sorry, people are actually buying resale. Okay, most people are actually buying the new launches. So again, we will just look at the supply and demand of the new launches, where during there's less new launches at time, basically less volume transacted. More new launches, there's more volume transacted. Okay, but we shall look at the numbers. So when we look at the numbers at time, first of all, we will look at is the price. Okay, we will look at the price for the property price index. But and I'm only looking at non-landed private residential. So I take away HDB and landed property. So there are two data that actually we look at. Number one is the quarter to quarter. Quarter to quarter means we compare the first quarter of 2025 versus Q4 of 2024 and see how much prices has increased. So if you look at last quarter and this quarter, the price increase has actually only been 0.6%. Now, I find this is actually a pretty normal number, because if you look at other trend lines historically, right, most of the time the prices or people will buy properties is during Q2 and Q3. So these are the one that will make up the total number or that you will see within 1 year transacted. So what I'm going to say is that government will still monitor this number to see the difference between Q1 and Q2, whether is there a difference or not. But when we were to see the 1 year difference mark between last year and this year, the total number percentage has increased by 4.3%. Now, during the COVID period, that time in 2020 at time, price actually increased by 11%. That's when a lot of people are buying property. And now the price has actually dropped. The increase has dropped by 4.3%. Okay, this is still quite a alarming number, because the government wants a sustainable growth, which is roughly 2.5 to 3% growth. And now we are still hitting 4.3%. So looking at these two numbers, if last quarter was to increase by 0.6% and the growth is 4.3%, I believe the government will still look into the growth of Q2 and Q3 of this year to determine whether they should come out with another cooling measure. Note, the last cooling measure was in 2023, and basically that actually caused the prices to actually increase by not so much. Instead of 10%, it dropped to 4%. So I think that right now this number seems to be very normal. But when we look at the number of transacted that time, total number of units transacted for this quarter was 6,000 over units. Okay, and when we were to compare with last quarter at time, it dropped by 11.2%. Now, I still feel that this is actually a very normal number, is because, again, last quarter, there's a lot of new launches, like Emerald of Katong, Chuan Park was actually launches. A lot of people actually buy the new projects. And, of course, when a lot of people buy that time, right, the price difference become very, very high. Okay. But when we look at year on year that time, right, which is again, I say a more accurate number, the total number of people buying properties, even after the cooling measure in 2023, there was an increase of 54%. So basically, this slide actually tells me that a lot of people still need property. Okay, Singapore, we still have a very shortfall of houses, and that leads to why the price still continue to go up. So as long as volume transacted is a lot, it is very healthy, prices is still good. I believe prices will still continue to go up. But then again, you're going to ask me, hey, James, which sector is it doing better, doing worse? Okay, so this is actually a price trend in which I categorize out into the three distinct mark. Basically, the core central, the outside of central region, and the rest of central region. Okay, so core central basically is city center area like Orchard Road, Newton area. Rest of central region is RCR or city fringe. Okay, and outside central region is the more affordable property like Tampines, Pasir Ris, Yishun, Woodlands. Okay, so when you look at these three numbers at a time, again, this is not the actual price. This is the property price index, and property price index is a ratio of the current pricing as compared to 09 pricing. Okay, so this is actually a benchmark compared to last time the pricing. So again, this is just a ratio. Okay, so I'm not saying that the purple one, which is core central, is the cheapest. No, it's just a ratio of comparison. But then again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to categorize the important benchmark of all these years out. Okay, so if you look at 2013, why is 2013 important? Is because it is the start of the cooling measure. 2016 was during the lull period, okay, where the effect kick in of the stamp duty. 2018, where people start to, oh, I cannot take it anymore, I need to buy property, and that is the start of the spike of the launches, okay. 2022, of course, is the COVID period. 2020 is a COVID period. 2022 is a recovery phase, and now we are at 2025. So I'm actually looking at the difference between core central to city fringe, rest of central region, city fringe as compared to outskirt. So you will see that if you were to compare the outskirt, right, the difference, if you look at the blue color one is actually outskirt, okay? It spiked a lot. It spiked very high as compared to the core central, which you see is very, very flat. Now, there's a reason for it. The main people who are buying outskirt, right, are actually Singaporeans. Okay, Singaporeans in the house, they from a condominium from a HDB upgrade to a condominium. Therefore, there's a very huge transacted volume of people buying outside central region, and because of that, right, the spike, people start to buy a lot. Okay, but then again, if you look at core central are normally bought by foreigners, and right now that ABSD by foreigners is actually 60%. So there are very few people buying the core central. That's number one, and also is majority of the luxury area. Where since Orchard Road is more to a luxury market, right, you will see that there's less people buying, where properties here are like 10 million and above. So what I'm going to say is that if you look at the past, or rather we look at the differences, right, the difference for the core and the RCR is actually very slight. Okay, the difference is only around 16-17%. Okay, but then again, if you look at the difference between the city fringe and the outskirt, you'll see that, oh, there's an increase of 16%, close to 38%. It's like more than double. Okay, so what I'm going to say is that since the transaction volume for core central is very low and the price actually increased very gently, therefore I feel that there's a very huge potential buying in the core central market. Okay, of course, not saying that buying core central market is good, but then again, if government were to reduce this policy of the ABSD for the foreigners, right, from maybe 60% drop to 30% or even 18% like in the past, more foreigners will enter into the Singapore market, and then this will be a very huge spike. So I'm going to say that core central region, if you can hold for maybe 10-20 years, Okay, I am very certain it's going to be a very good investment area. Okay, especially when the government remove this cooling measure. Now you may ask me, when will this government remove all these cooling measure? I will say is that we will never know. Okay, honestly, we will never know because again, most of foreigners only buy the core central region. Potentially, I will say is that we, of course, when we reach a recession, okay, then we need more money. We need more money pumping to our country. Therefore, government will remove all this for foreigners to buy into the core central region, which will cause a spike of property. Now, don't forget, you know, this is just a rumor, but potentially it may be true. Okay, please don't quote me on it. But then again, with US trade tariffs going on, Singapore we are going to get a blow on it, and because Singapore is going to get a blow on it, I'm not surprised we may have a recession. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year. And if we were to have a recession next year, definitely government will do something with the cooling measure, where it will help you as an investor. Okay, so fingers crossed. All right. Then okay, so that's it. For how about the rental stage? Now rental, you can see that I show you the transaction volume. Transaction volume has actually dropped, not very significant, but it's still there. And you will see that rental has now reached, actually in a way has plateau. So rental is actually not increasing, but actually in plateau quite okay. So don't hear news out there. Yes, transaction volume for rental has actually dropped in 2025. Okay, but we have to still look at the second quarter of 2025 to make a better judgment call. So what I'm going to say is that don't listen to news out there that, oh, rental volume has actually spiked up very high, or rental volume has been, you know, decreasing. Right now, rental volume is still in line. You can still hold on to your rental price from 2023 pricing. So you can look at the past transacted prices for 2023 all the way to 2025 to determine how much you are rent it for. And you know, you are not going to increase by a lot or increase very low for this rental amount. Okay, so that's all I have it for you. If you have any feedback, please feel free to like in the comments below. If you like this video, please help us give a thumbs up button or even subscribe, because it will help in the YouTube algorithm. I will be writing a more in-depth summary or article about my research. And if you are keen into know about this research, please feel free to look at the comment section where it will link you to the research section. Okay, that's all I have for you. Thank you so long and bye.